My stepsister ignored me for years, then called and said, "Move out." When I refused, she dragged me to court, but 7 words from the judge destroyed her plan. I am 27 years old, and my stepsister, Madison, is 28. We also have 3 younger half-siblings. But this is all about me and Madison. Well, largely about how she has been a complete nightmare since our parents married. When I was 8 years old, my mother married her father. And I suppose I was meant to be excited about starting a new family. But Madison made it clear from the start that she didn't want me around. I honestly don't know why. She despised me immediately away. I tried to be pleasant, as any 8-year-old would. I imagined we might be friends, hang around, and play together, as kids do. But she wouldn't have any of it. She'd just look at me as if I were trash. You know that face when someone refuses to acknowledge your existence? That was Madison. It did not matter what I did. She always made it clear that she did not want me around. At first, I assumed it was because I was the new kid in the family. Maybe she was upset because our parents got married. However, it became evident over time that it was more than that. She actually disliked me. At school, things were far worse. We attended the same elementary school, and she made sure everyone knew we weren't true sisters. When someone brought it up, she would say something like, "Oh, she's just my stepsister," or "We're not really related." And she did not stop there. She would go out of her way to embarrass me in front of other children. One afternoon during recess, she informed the other kids that I wasn't a member of her family, and that her father only married my mother because she needed a place to live. I was 8. How can you be so nasty to a child who is simply trying to understand how families work? Her father, my stepfather, witnessed the situation and attempted to intervene several times. He'd tell her to stop it, that we're all family now, and that she should treat me better. For a while, I believe it worked. Like, she stopped being mean in front of him. But as soon as he left, she reverted to her old ways. She seemed to take joy in making me feel as if I didn't belong. And, to be honest, as a little child, I had no idea. I'd come home from school crying some days, telling my mother about how Madison was treating me, and she'd always say the same thing. "She will come around. Simply give her time." Spoiler alert, she never showed up. Madison even tried to involve our younger half-siblings. She'd tell them that I wasn't their true sister, and that they shouldn't listen to or hang out with me. They were young at the time, so they didn't really comprehend the situation. But nonetheless, the fact that she would try to drag people into her little hate campaign against me is messed up, right? She was constantly trying to find new methods to get under my skin. Now, I'm not going to say my entire childhood was ruined because of Madison. I had a fantastic time too, especially with my mother and stepfather. They did everything they could to make me feel included, and they were always sympathetic when I complained about Madison's behavior. But there was always that looming cloud over me, knowing that the one person who should have been my strongest ally in all of this, my stepsister, wanted nothing to do with me. And when she did want to do something with me, it was only to make me miserable. I believe the worst thing was when she began spreading stories about me at school. One afternoon in middle school, Madison told a group of kids that I had stolen something from her, which I had not. But, as kids, they believed her. And so I was the thief at school. It was humiliating. She understood exactly what she was doing. She was not simply being rude. She was actively attempting to ruin my life. Eventually, my stepfather had to step in. Madison had such a nasty attitude that she stopped coming over to our place for a spell. He told her bluntly that if she couldn't even try to be courteous, she shouldn't bother coming around at all. I'm not sure if that was the proper choice, but it was a relief. At least I didn't have to deal with her continually getting in my face and making me feel bad. She eventually moved home with her mother full-time when she was about 14. I assumed that was the end of it, as if the distance would provide her with some perspective or anything. But no, it didn't. We still saw each other on holidays and birthdays, and every time, she insisted that nothing had changed. She remained just as rude, condescending, and determined to make me feel like an outsider in my own family. By the time we were teenagers, I had given up on attempting to have a relationship with her. What was the point? I'd spent years trying to be pleasant and reach out, but she'd never made an effort to meet me halfway. So, I simply stopped caring. If she wants to pretend I don't exist, that's okay. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on her. I remember the last time we had a non-hostile interaction. We were 17 years old, and she had recently given birth to her first child. Yeah, she became pregnant at 17 and moved back in with us for a bit. You'd think motherhood would soften her, right? No, she was the same Madison. She worsened rather than improved. She would not let me near her infant. She warned me not to touch her child, talk to them, or even look at them, as if I were some kind of monster she wanted to keep her child safe from. At that time, I knew we would never have a sisterly bond. She made sure of it, and, honestly, I was done trying. I had my own life to concentrate on, and if she wanted to be bitter and angry, that was her option. But I wasn't going to let her bring me down anymore, so that's where it all began. We haven't seen each other for a few years. I honestly thought I was done with her, but, as it turned out, she was not finished with me. Okay, so where I left off, I hadn't seen or spoken to Madison in several years, and I was fine with that. My life was going well without her drama, and I was doing my own thing. But then, a few months ago, I received this phone call from my mother. My mother doesn't call me for no reason, so I knew something was up. I pick up the phone, and she says, "Hey Emma, there's something we need to talk about." I immediately thought, great, what now? My mother has a habit of sugarcoating things, so I knew whatever she was about to say was definitely terrible news. So she starts off casually, informing me about Madison's recent struggles. She apparently lost her job several months ago, followed by her residence. She now lives with my mother and stepfather, as well as her 3 children, and she describes the situation as tense. At this moment, I'm still only listening, but I'm not really feeling sorry for Madison. After everything she's done, how can I? But then my mother drops the bomb. Madison has been asking if she and the children can stay with you for a bit. I swear, I almost dropped my phone. Like, what? Stay with me? The same individual who couldn't stand me for years wants to move into my home with 3 children. I wasn't sure how to answer at first. I just sat there in silence for a minute, trying to digest everything. My mother took advantage of the opportunity to continue chatting, telling me about how cramped their house is and how it would be quite helpful if I could take Madison in for a short period of time, just till she recovered. Okay, here's the thing. I worked hard to get to where I am. I have my own place, a job I'm proud of, and a life that is finally drama-free. The last thing I want is to bring Madison and her mess into the picture. Plus, 3 children is not a small amount of aid. That's a whole new life I didn't plan for. So I just answered, "Mom, I don't think that's a good idea." Of course, she attempted to persuade me into it. "Emma, she is your sister. She is family. Don't you believe you should aid her?" But honestly, there's only so much I'm willing to put up with, whether it's family or not, and Madison exceeded that boundary a long time ago. I told my mother, "Look, I understand she's in a bad situation, but she's never treated me like family. She created her bed, and now she must lie in it." My mother did not appreciate hearing that, but I wasn't going to let her guilt me into doing something I knew I'd regret. And that's when things changed dramatically. The next day, Madison phoned me personally. I hadn't heard her voice in some years, so when I saw her name appear on my phone, my pulse raced a little. I wasn't sure if I should respond, but I figured it was best to get it over with. So I took it up, and before I could say hello, she dived right into it. "Emma, I need your help," she continued, not bothering with a greeting. She seemed desperate, which was understandable given the circumstances, but it still caught me off guard. I mean, this is someone who has spent her entire existence pretending I don't exist, and now she's begging for my aid as if we're suddenly best friends. She went on to say that she and her children were crowded into a small room at my parents' house, and it was not working out. There was no space, her children were constantly fighting, and she was at her wit's end. I listened, but all I could think about was how she had been treating me like garbage for years, and now she expected me to intervene and save her. Then she hit me with the most outrageous portion. She didn't simply want to stay with me. She wanted me to leave my house and return to our parents' home so that she and her children could take over. I swear I nearly laughed out loud when she said that. Like, is she real? She effectively informed me that she needed my house more than I did, and that making the sacrifice would benefit the family. I was stunned. I couldn't form words for a second. When I finally responded, all I could say was, "Wait, you want me to move out of my house for you?" I was hoping I misunderstood, but she doubled down. "Yes," she replied, as if it were the most common request in the world. "You can go live with Mom and Dad for a while. They have plenty of space. It's just until I get back on my feet." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This woman, who had made my life a daily misery, was now attempting to force me out of my own home. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, and said, "Madison, that's not going to happen. I'm not giving up my house. I worked hard for it, and I'm not about to hand it over to you." That's when she lost it. She started ranting at me, calling me selfish, that I didn't care about my family, and that I was leaving her out to dry. She even brought up the fact that I don't have children, as if that somehow made me less deserving of my own home. She was guilt-tripping me, making me feel awful for not helping her out. But here's the deal. I was not going to fall for it. Not this time. I'd spent several years attempting to reconcile with her and be the greater person. And where did it lead me? Nowhere. So I just responded, "Madison, I'm sorry you're in this situation, but it's not my responsibility to fix it. You've never wanted anything to do with me, and now, all of a sudden, I'm supposed to uproot my life for you." No, that did not go over well. She screamed even louder, accusing me of being a terrible person who had abandoned my own family. It was actually quite amazing how quickly she went from desperate to angry. I didn't know what more to say, so I hung up the phone. After that, I hadn't heard from her in a while. I assumed she had received the message, but I was mistaken. Several days later, my mother called again, this time quite distraught. Madison had apparently been constantly whining to Mom about how selfish and uninterested I was to help. My mother, bless her heart, was still trying to play mediator, saying, "Can't you just let her stay for a little while? She really needs help, Emma," but I wouldn't budge. I told my mother the same thing that I told Madison. I am not giving up my house, and I am not going to let her walk all over me. I've had enough of her crap. My mother was not pleased, but I could tell she was beginning to understand where I was coming from. Madison's entitlement was off the charts, and even my mother could not dispute it. Still, she was caught in the midst, attempting to keep the peace between her two girls. But I wasn't going to let Madison use it to control me again. Update Hasson. Okay, so after the whole phone call incident with Madison, I felt fairly good about standing my position. I assumed she'd either find another solution or keep complaining to our parents until they were sick of her. In any case, it was no longer in my hands, and I could resume my normal life. Or so I thought. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at home on a Sunday, minding my own business, when I had a tap at the door. Now, I don't get many visits, so I was a little confused. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I was hoping it was just a delivery person with a parcel or anything. But as I opened the door, guess who was standing there? Yes, Madison. She was there on my porch with all 3 of her children and several suitcases. My stomach plummeted, literally. I just stood there for a second, not sure what to say. She stared at me with a serious expression and said, "Emma, we need to talk." My face became hot. I wasn't angry at first. I was more surprised than anything. "What are you doing here?" I inquired, attempting to maintain my composure. Her children were all standing there, fatigued and confused, and I felt awful for them. But I couldn't believe she would show up like this. Madison sighed as if she were annoyed by me, which made no sense. "Look, Emma, I have nowhere else to go. It's too crowded at Mom and Dad's, and they're growing upset with me. I expected you to have a little more empathy given that we are relatives." I could feel my jaw tightening. Empathy. After everything she had put me through, she wanted to play the family card again. I was still trying to process the reality that she was standing on my porch, plainly expecting me to allow her and her children move in. I was not having it. "Madison," I murmured, trying not to lose my cool. "I already told you I'm not letting you stay here. I'm not sure why you thought showing up unexpectedly would change anything." She rolled her eyes and crossed her arms. "You are being foolish. I am not asking for much. We'll just be here for a short time, until I can find a new job and a place for the kids." At that point, I could feel the wrath rising. "You're not staying here," I yelled more loudly this time. "I'm sorry you're in a tough spot, but you've never wanted anything to do with me, and now you expect me to just drop everything for you?" Her kids were getting restless, and I could sense this talk wasn't going well. Madison, of course, was not giving up so simply. She shifted her weight and added, "It's not just about me, Emma. Think about the kids. They need somewhere stable. Don't you care about them?" Okay, let me pause for a moment here. Of course, I care about the children. They did nothing wrong, and it is not their fault that their mother put them in this predicament. But that does not mean I am responsible for fixing everything. I had no connection with them. Thank you to Madison for ensuring that I was never a part of their life. So, while I cared about them, I wasn't going to let her shame me into bringing them in. "I care," I responded, attempting to keep my voice calm. "But you made it apparent long ago that I was not a part of their lives. You did not want me around them. Now I am meant to play the hero." She huffed and looked at me. "Emma, it's not about the past anymore. You need to grow up. Things are different now. I am asking you as a mother, not as a stepsister." I couldn't believe her nerve, as if being a mother erased everything she had put me through as a child. I took a big breath, knowing this was not going to go well. "Madison, I am not doing this. You need to leave." Her face twisted into something like a mix of rage and despair. "So that's it. You're just going to turn your back on me, on the kids, after everything we've been through, and you're just going to let us suffer." I was done at that moment. I was trying to remain calm for the sake of the kids, but her entitlement was too much. "You made your choice a long time ago," I said firmly. "You didn't want me in your life then, and I'm not letting you use me now." She glared at me, her eyes narrowing. "You're unbelievable. You really think you're better than me, don't you?" I wasn't trying to act superior to her. I just wasn't about to let her walk all over me. But before I could react, her oldest child, who appeared to be approximately 11, tugged on Madison's arm and asked, "Mom, can we go?" "I'm tired." Madison looked down at her, and for a brief moment, I thought she'd give up and leave, but no. She returned to me and said, "You're making a huge mistake, Emma. Don't think I'm going to forget this." And with that, she walked off, her kids trailing behind her. I watched as they climbed back into their car, Madison cursing under her breath the whole time. I didn't know whether to be relieved or upset, probably a combination of the two. As they drove away, I shut the door and leaned against it, trying to process what had just happened. I knew Madison was entitled, but showing up at my house with her kids and expecting me to just roll over like that, it blew my mind. I felt bad for her kids. They didn't deserve any of this, but I wasn't going to let Madison manipulate me into giving up my home. After she left, I called my mom to tell her what had happened. She wasn't surprised, but she did sound disappointed that I didn't help. "I understand, Emma, but Madison's in a really tough spot right now. Maybe there's another way you can help," but I had already made up my mind. "Mom, I'm not getting involved. I can't." She's never treated me like family, and I'm not about to let her drag me down into her mess. My mom sighed. I just wish things were different, I said. And I meant it, but some things never change, and Madison was one of them. After Madison and her kids left, I thought that was the end of it, that she'd finally understand that I wasn't going to give in, and she'd move on to bother someone else. But of course, that's not how it worked out. To be honest, I should have known better. It didn't take long before things escalated in unexpected ways. Several days after her dramatic visit, I received another call from my mother. This wasn't unusual. She and I spoke frequently. But the moment I answered, I knew something was wrong. Her voice was tight, as if she was stressed or trying not to yell, which immediately put me on edge. Emma, I need to talk to you about what happened with Madison, she said, jumping right into it. Isahil. Mom, I already told you what happened when she showed up at my house, and I told her she couldn't stay here. I was stunned for a moment, as if Madison was really out here trying to turn my own mom and stepdad against me because I wouldn't let her take over my house. She's been talking to your stepdad and me nonstop since then, saying how unfair you're being, claiming you're turning your back on family, and she hesitated, saying we should cut you off for not helping her. The audacity. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Wait, she's telling you guys to cut me off? Pretty much, Mom replied. She's making it sound like you're heartless for not helping her and the kids when they need it. She's really got your stepfather all worked up, and he's been talking about how we should be doing more to support her as a family. I couldn't believe it. Mom, you know that's ridiculous, right? She's trying to manipulate you because I won't give her what she wants. Mom sighed, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. I know, Emma. I get it, but things are getting tense here. Your stepfather believes we should be supporting her more, especially with the kids involved. And Madison, well, you know how she is. She's making us feel like we're failing her as parents. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache coming on. This was exactly what I was afraid of, Madison dragging everyone into her drama and making me the villain for not bending to her demands. Mom, listen, I understand she's in a bad place, but that doesn't mean I'm responsible for fixing her problems. I've been more than clear about why I can't help her. I know, Mom said softly, but you need to understand that your stepfather is struggling with this. He doesn't like seeing his daughter in such a bad place, and he believes we should be doing more to ensure the kids' safety. It wasn't even Mom's intention, but hearing her talk about the kids like that made me feel like I was the bad guy, but I wasn't. I knew Madison was using her children as pawns in her little game, and I wasn't about to let myself be played. Mom, I'm not going to let Madison guilt me into anything. I understand that the kids are in a tough spot, but that's on her, not me. She's the one who's made her choices, and now she has to deal with the consequences. Mom was quiet for a moment, and I could tell she was trying to figure out what to say next. Finally, she spoke. Emma, I wish things weren't like this. I hate seeing the family so split. Me too, I answered, my voice softening. But this isn't my fault, Mom. Madison has been treating me as if I do not exist for years, and now she wants my help. That's not how family works. There was another pause, and then she sighed. I know you're right, but just be prepared, Emma. Your stepfather is very furious, and I'm scared he'll side with Madison in all of this. That hit me harder than I expected. I'd always had a good relationship with my stepfather, and the thought of him turning against me because of Madison's manipulations made me sick. But I couldn't back down now. I had to stand my ground no matter how messy things got. Thanks for the heads up, Mom, I said quietly, but I'm not going to change my mind. I know, she said. Just be careful, okay? I don't want this to get any worse. As we hung up, I couldn't help but feel a knot in my gut. Madison seemed determined to drag me into her mess regardless of what I did. And now she was turning my stepfather against me too. It was exhausting, and honestly, I wasn't sure how much more of this I could bear. Of course, Madison wasn't done. Several days later, I began receiving calls from other family members, whom I hadn't spoken to in months, my aunt, cousin, and several distant cousins from my stepfather's side. Every single one of them had the same narrative. Madison had been telling everyone how I had refused to aid her when she was needy and homeless, portraying me as the villain in her little story. It was irritating. I knew she was manipulative, but this was a new low for her. I spent half my time taking calls from anxious relatives, all of whom were attempting to guilt me into doing the right thing by assisting her. I couldn't believe how effortlessly she'd won their support, despite the fact that none of them understood the entire tale. At one point, my cousin, whom I hadn't spoken to in about 2 years, called and began lecturing me on family values and how I was letting my pride get in the way of assisting others in need. I was about to lose it, but I managed to hold my cool long enough to convey my side of the tale. I informed her, "You don't know half of it. Madison has been treating me like dirt since we were kids, and now she wants me to give up my home for her." My cousin tried to argue that people change and Madison was just trying to survive, but I wasn't having it. "She hasn't changed at all," I said, my voice firm. "She's just using this situation to get what she wants, and I'm not buying it." By the time we hung up, I was weary. I couldn't believe how much energy Madison was sucking from me, even when she wasn't physically present. It was as if she'd found a way to violate my space without ever being there. As the days passed, the calls eventually stopped, but the tension with my mom and stepdad was still there. Every conversation felt like it was walking on eggshells, and I could tell they were struggling to balance their loyalty to me with their guilt over Madison. It was a mess, and I hated that it had come to this, but I wasn't going to give in no matter how much pressure they put on me. Madison had made her choices, and now she had to live with them, even if it meant I had to be the bad guy in her story. This time, however, it wasn't just phone calls or guilt trips from relatives. It was something far worse. It began with a knock on the door. After everything that had happened, I was a little paranoid about people just showing up at my house unannounced, so I wasn't exactly thrilled to hear the knock. I looked through the peephole, and there was a man standing there in a uniform. My heart sank because I immediately thought something bad had happened. I opened the door, and he handed me an envelope and said, "You've been served." I stared at the envelope, confused and a little freaked out. I hadn't done anything wrong, so what was this about? I opened it right there, and to my complete surprise, I was looking at some kind of legal paperwork. It took me a second to process it, but when I finally understood what I was reading, I couldn't believe it. Madison was suing me for what? To force me to let her and her kids stay in my house? I'm not kidding. She had actually gone and filed some kind of claim that I was denying her housing or something like that, trying to legally force me to give up my home for her and her kids. I couldn't believe it. Who does that? She couldn't force me to do it, so now she was attempting to legally seize my home. I felt a rush of rage and amazement sweep over me. I had no idea you could do that. I called my mother right away and told her what had occurred. I called a lawyer to see what my options were, and he reassured me that the whole thing was ridiculous and would never hold up in court. Madison had actually gone to a lawyer to try to pull this off, and she was just as surprised as I was. I couldn't believe it had come to this. It's one thing to have a toxic family member who tries to take advantage of you, but to actually sue your own stepsister because she refuses to give you her house is a whole other level of entitlement. The lawyer told me not to worry too much, but we'd still have to deal with it legally, so we started preparing. A month later, we had a court date set, and I was nervous. I knew I had the law on my side, but I also knew Madison could be manipulative, and I was worried she'd try to spin the situation to make me look like the bad guy again, as she had done with our family, but there was no turning back now. When the day finally came, I walked into that courtroom feeling a mix of anxiety and anger. Madison was already there with her lawyer, and when I saw her, I swear she didn't even look worried. In fact, she looked smug, as if she actually thought she was going to win. I sat down with my lawyer and we started going over everything. The judge summoned us, and Madison's lawyer began to make a case about how she was a struggling mother of 3, and I had refused to provide her with housing in her time of need. The way they spoke, you'd think I was some kind of heartless monster who had thrown her and her children out on the street. I couldn't believe how far she'd go to make me look bad. She didn't mention how she'd been abusive to me for years or how she'd tried to trick me into giving up my house. It was all about how she was a single mother trying to provide for her children, and I was the selfish stepsister standing in her way. When it was our turn, my lawyer explained how Madison had never wanted anything to do with me unless she needed something, how she had shown up at my house unannounced, demanding that I move out so she could move in, and how she had been trying to guilt me into helping her despite the fact that we had no relationship. The judge listened intently, and I could see him nodding along, knowing where I was coming from. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The judge turned to Madison and asked her directly, "Why do you believe you are entitled to your stepsister's home?" That's when everything fell apart for her. She stuttered and tried to make it about the kids again, but the judge cut her off and basically told her that this was a ridiculous claim. He explained that I had no legal obligation to let her stay in my house, and that just because she was in a difficult situation didn't mean she could take advantage of family. Madison looked like she'd been slapped in the face. Her smug attitude completely disappeared, and she just stood there speechless. I could see the realization hit her. She wasn't going to get what she wanted this time. The judge dismissed the case, and that was the end of it. I walked out of that courtroom with a huge weight lifted off my shoulders. Madison didn't even look at me as we left. She just grabbed her stuff and stormed out with her lawyer. I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew one thing. I was finally done with her. When I got home, I called my mother and told her what had happened. She was relieved, but also sad. I could tell she was still struggling with the situation, and I felt bad for her. But at the same time, I couldn't keep letting Madison ruin my life. Enough was enough. Since then, Madison hasn't tried to contact me. I haven't heard a word from her. And to be honest, I'm fine with that. I've reclaimed my life. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control again. So, yep, that's the story of how my stepsister tried to take my house and ended up losing everything. It's not exactly the happy ending I expected, but at least now I know where I stand. To be honest, I'm just glad it's over.